Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another fun beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll always know when we're posting new content. So today's project is going to be a freeform peyote design around a geode slice. So you can see I have a bunch of really fun geode slices here. So if you are seeing this video, it means that our newest collection is up live on the website, EurekaCrystalBeads.com, and it is our Wildhorse collection. As you can see, I have this beautiful imagery right here that our collection is based on, and you can get an idea of kind of the beautiful neutral colors that we're going for. So one of the items in the collection is a beautiful geode slice. And so I brought a smattering of them over here so you could see, because they do all vary just a little bit. So I wanted to give you some examples of how they can look. And then I'm going to do a really fun freeform peyote sort of beaded, bezel beaded encasement around one using beads from this collection. So first, let me give you a close-up of some of the things that I'm going to be using before I get to the geode slices here. So I'm going to be using a mix of Toho and Mayuki. In this case, I have a beautiful Delicas bead by Mayuki here. I have a Toho seed bead here. This is an 11. And I have a Mayuki size 8 here in a beautiful sort of caramel color. I think the thing you want to remember when you're doing freeform peyote is that you want to make sure that you have a beautiful mix of harmonious colors, different textures, and also different sizes of beads. And not only different sizes, but I have two 11s here, but one's a round seed bead and one is a Delicas. So you want to get beautiful texture within your beads, and then of course more texture with the peyote that we're going to be doing. Lastly, I also have another bead that's included in this collection. This is a little 2mm druck, and this is nice because it's not that much bigger than any of these beads here. So it's pretty comparable to that size 8. So it's going to work in nicely, but because it is a bit more round, it's again going to give a nice texture difference when I'm doing the peyote. So let's take a look at some of these geode slices here, because I want you to get an idea of some of the differences that you can expect when you order this collection, or even if you want to order these slices on our website. Each one does come a little bit different. Isn't this beautiful? This is the wonderful inspiration for this collection. You can see the beautiful sort of dusty, deep blues and sandy colors and wonderful neutrals in this collection, Wildhorse collection. So this is just a smattering of some of the geode slices that you could get in this collection. The collection comes with one. Sometimes they might have a hole in the center. You can see this one has some really beautiful sort of geode, like little druzy type of texture going on right in the center there. You can have some that do not have a hole and that are a bit more oblong. As you can see, they all remain within this sort of color scheme, but they can vary a bit, but they're all going to go with the seed beads and with the other accent beads like the check beads that are going to come with this collection. It's all going to look harmonious together, regardless of which which geode slice you get. Some of them can be much more organic, which is actually really fun for this project because it gives you a lot of little points to hook into. And the ones with the holes can give you a lot of options because you can go in and out of that hole in the center. This is another one with a hole here, and that has that little druzy action right in the center there. But they're all going to be different. They're all going to be gorgeous. They're going to vary in size a little bit, but as you can see, not by much. So obviously the dimensions of this one and this one are a little bit different, but they're both sort of a nice little palmful, I would say. And they're going to make amazing focals for this necklace or any other project. These would also be great for wire wrapping. So if you're into working with wire, these are going to be stunning for something like that, and you're going to make some beautiful projects. But today we're going to be focusing on peyote. So this is the one that I've decided to use today, which has a lovely pale blue in the center. So let me move these others out of the way, and we're going to get started. Okay, so I've laid out a little bit of each of my 4 different types of beads. And again, the collection comes with a lot more than what I'm showing here. So you can incorporate any of the other larger beads that come in the collection or any other beads from your own stash. So, you know, you have a lot of options. Again, it's freeform peyote, so it's sort of no rules, anything goes, which, believe it or not, many people do struggle with. But hopefully this is something you want to give a try, because it's a lot of fun if you can just sort of let go of some of the anxiety of not having an exact plan. So I have my druzy here. I'm sorry, not my druzy, my geode. Now, as far as my fireline and my needle, you can work with a 10 needle or a 12 needle. It's up to you. I tend to always go to my trusty 12, but a size 10 would work just fine. I have 6-pound fireline here, and because of my color schemes, I am working with smoke. It also, of course, makes it easier for you guys to see on screen. And I'm starting off with about a wingspan, and I have a tail pulled, so it feels a little shorter as I'm working with it. But I think about a wingspan should take me through this project. And another reason that this video is a little more unique than some of the others is that just as you would be kind of winging it and figuring it out as you go, as you start to do something that's freeform peyote, so am I. So as you see the clips in this video, I wasn't really pre-planned in any way. So we're gonna enjoy the surprise of how it comes out. So what I'm going to start by doing is picking up a series of beads, and I'm going to be tying them into a ring. And that ring is going to catch one part of my little geode slice here, because what you want to do is imagine you're sort of making a seatbelt for your geode slice. You want to have some contact points, so that way as you sew on your beads and then you sew peyote off your little rings of beads we're going to be adding, we know that this is held in place and it's not going to slip out the bottom or slip out the side or slip out the top. So if you imagine how a seatbelt kind of goes across your lap, and then there's the part that goes up across your chest to your shoulder. That's what you want to think of here. We want to create contact points of safety similar to a seatbelt. So we're going to start with the loop of seed beads. That's going to be sort of the lap belt. It's going to catch right over here, and it's going to circle around the stone. And from there, we'll do another anchor point that comes up here. That's going to be our start. What we'll do is a bunch of peyote with various beads off of those bits, and then from there on, the sky's the limit. We can add more little contact points. We're going to want to add one somewhere where we want our beaded loop to go. So in this case, I do have a nice little groove right here, which is where I'm going to end up putting a line of beads to have a beaded loop. So this could hang as a pendant, but you can hang these however you'd like. So it could hang horizontally. You could even have fringe coming off the bottom, and that would be beautiful. But it can hang horizontally. It can hang at a diagonal. There aren't any rules with this, so we can definitely have fun with it. Some of the other, let me go back to over here. Some of the other ones really give you a lot of fun options here with the little grooves on them, and even some of the more round or smooth, and I use that term loosely here because it's a rock, but even some of the smoother edges are still going to have little grooves where you can start to add your anchor point. So fear not if you get a geode slice that doesn't necessarily have deep grooves like this. You're absolutely going to be able to work with it. So I am going to start a little simply at first by picking up just my Delicas. And we're going to pick up a nice long line of Delicas, and we're going to end up making a beaded loop. And the size of the loop, I'm not quite sure yet. Again, it's a seatbelt, so that lap belt could be here. It could be a little higher. I just know I want it sort of on the bottom half of this here. So let me just get a whole bunch of these picked up to make the circumference around the stone, and I will see you back in just a minute. Okay, so I've loaded on what turned out to be 50 Delica beads. I tied them into a circle with a square knot, which is right over left, left over right. It's like a double knot, but that second knot is backwards if you're not familiar with a square knot. And then I just traveled through a little section of my ring here. Honestly, I didn't count how many I went through. I just kind of went through whatever my needle happened to pop through. I do this because I like to start my beadwork coming out of a bead and not coming off of a knot that's just in between two beads. So that's why I do that. And this worked out pretty well because my little geode slice is right here. It's a little start of my seat belt. Just like that. You'll notice that above this line is when it starts to widen. That's how I know that this isn't going to fall right out the bottom here. You can see it goes all the way around, just like that. Now, I'm not going to worry about having my beadwork on the geode slice at this moment. I'm going to start some of my beadwork and then re-slip it back on, and that's going to make it a little easier to work with at the moment. Now, this does happen to be an even number of beads, which I think is going to be helpful for this first ring because it'll be even count tubular peyote, so I will have a step up. If you're not familiar with peyote, check out our channel. We do have some really great introductory peyote videos if you're not too familiar with this stitch. After that, I'm not going to worry nearly as much about even or odd numbers because at that point it will become much more free form and I can really put beads anywhere I like. And that's the thing that you sort of have to keep telling yourself when you're doing freeform peyote is that there are really no rules to it. And that's why it's a lot of fun, I think, for some people. Eventually what will happen is from one of these little midpoints, I'll kind of do another line of beads maybe up here or back to there, and we'll start to create little anchor points, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So for now, what we're gonna do is just start our peyote. And I'm going to start by using my Delicas at first. Later on, after this next row, I'll branch off a bit more. So if you're not familiar with peyote, we're coming out of a bead, we picked up a new bead, and we're skipping over a bead and going into the one after that. So another way to look at it is if you're coming out of bead A, you're skipping over bead B, and you're going into bead C. And the bead that we just picked up will sit next to bead B, which is the bead that we skipped over. Okay. We're going to continue on around our ring, sewing in more of these beads, and I'm going to get a few more in there and I'll give you another little close-up. One bead at a time. And this is what we start to get. You see the little up beads and little down beads, the little teeth we get. And in those little ditches that we've created, those little spaces, peyote is sometimes called stitch in the ditch because the next row we do after that, the beads will sit in those little ditches. So I'm going to keep going around and I'll come back to you in a minute to show you my little step up and show you what we're going to do next as far as involving our little geode slice here. Be back in a minute. Okay, so I've gone almost all the way around here and I'm just looking to put my very last Delica in here. So the space that we have left is perfect for one Delica, and I'm going to go through the Delica that I need to, the C Delica, if you will, of our ABC analogy, and that's going to lock this last Delica down into place, but then I'm going to do my step up, and my step up is to go through the next bead, which is the popped up bead. It's actually the first bead I added when I started this row. So we're going to pull this down. That bead, as you can see, gets locked right into place. And now we're coming out of a popped up bead and we're ready to pick up a new bead to sit in that first little ditch. But at this point, we're going to want to start to make sure that we're working on our peyote, including this geode, okay? Because you want to make sure that you don't pull something so tight that suddenly it doesn't fit in the area that you wanted it to fit anymore. So we're going to start to work a little bit more on our geode. And as far as this tail goes, you can stick a needle on this at any point and just weave it in. You just wanted to make sure that you left it long enough to do that. So you don't want to leave a little, half-inch tail. Make sure that it's long enough that you could weave it through, tie a couple half-inch knots, but I'm not going to worry about that quite yet. So what I like to do now is I like to secure this into place. I want to make sure that this can't come off. So we're going to start to think about where we want another little seatbelt point to be, if I may. So I think what I'm actually going to do is just what I showed you. I think I kind of like the idea of dramatically going backwards like this. So I'm going to pick up beads to follow along where you can see the thread here. It's going to wrap around the back. And then I'm thinking maybe come back to the front and hook into there. So again, I am just figuring this out as I go, no differently than you would. There's going to be very few things that you can do wrong with freeform peyote. So I think what I'm going to start to do is maybe pick up some Delicas to start, and then I'm going to pick up some other beads here and start to mix some of those in. Another thing to keep in mind is just because I'm moving on from this area here does not mean I'm done with peyote here. The beauty about this is you can keep going back to certain areas and building them up as you see fit. So if you start to work on this and you think, you know what, based on sort of the composition that I have going on here, based on the way this is looking balanced or imbalanced, I think I need to go back here and build up a little more peyote. Or maybe I have a lot of beige up here, and I wanted to work in some of the beige down here to balance it out. There's no rules. You can absolutely go back to an area and add more in. At this point, what my focus is simply trying to get my seat belt on my geode slice. I want to make sure that it's somehow locked into place, and then I'm going to worry about building up areas a little bit more. So I'm going to add on a whole bunch of beads, and I'll see you back here in a minute to show you what I've picked up. Let me get my little ring on here again. I'm going to show you what I picked up. So I picked up a little smattering of beads here. I started with some more Delicas. I went up to some 11s and some 8s. Then I decreased back down, and I just added on kind of whatever I felt like. And I wanted it to wrap, get that tail out of the way. I wanted it to wrap around the back of the stone and then sort of meet back here somewhere. So let's see, thinking maybe something like that might work out pretty well. So we need to lock this into place next, because otherwise the whole thing's going to continue to be a little bit of a wiggly mess, and we don't want that. So the hardest part really is this. After this, and everything is a bit more, as you can see, after this, everything is a bit more locked into place, and you can just continue to bead on as you see fit. But this is, like I said, our seat belt comes first. So I think I'm going to lock in about there. I'm just going to start to head up some beads. I'm not even going to worry about the peyote aspect of this yet. I just want to have my seat belt kind of locked into place. And yeah, it's going to be a little wiggly. As you can see, I'm wiggling with it too. So there's what we got so far. And again, this is all going to have beautiful peyote coming off of it. But now I want to tighten this up a bit more. So I'm probably going to do another little seat belt with a little anchor point. I'll end up doing one down here as well to keep that nice and tight. So I might kind of go up here and maybe come back around there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away. I'm going to start to add more beads that I can start to wrap around my stone, and I'm going to grab that little anchor point, and I'll see you back in a minute so we can continue on. Okay, as you can see, I've made some more anchor points here. So to show you what I've done here, I had exited out of here and I added on beads to then continue on the back. I hooked back in to this original sort of ring I had over here, traveled down here, traveled through here, and then added in a little bridge here to further hold this on a little tighter. Again, it's still a little loose because I haven't secured anything or done much peyote. But once I start to do peyote, this is also going to tighten up a little more. So don't worry too greatly if things are a little bit loosey-goosey. You want to be able to get your needle in there, first of all, to do your peyote, but the peyote will tighten things up a little bit, especially as you start to maybe use some smaller beads in bigger bead areas. Things will pull in a little bit. So at this point, what I'm going to do, because I'm coming out of one of my little up beads here, I'm just going to start some peyote around here just to start to keep this all a little bit tight, because right now it's all just sort of strung through so things can loosen up a little bit easier, but I want to start to tighten things up. And then I can travel to any of these sections and start to build on beautiful beads. And because I have my little harness points here, my little seat belts, my stone's not going anywhere. So any other bridges I do after that will be sort of purely decorative or for additional reinforcement, but I don't really need to do more anchor points really than what I've done. My stone's not going anywhere because I've worked my way into those grooves and I'm tightening everything up with my peyote. So now that I'm on the back here, I am going to start by building up peyote with the Delicas, which is the area that I'm already in. Mainly because I want to start to get things nice and tight as far as all of this before I start to branch off. The more you do peyote with the same bead, the tighter you can get it to stay. So that's sort of a trick. If you find that an area is a little bit loose, do some peyote with the same type of bead in that area, and that'll help to keep it a bit tighter. And once you know everything's nice and secure, then you can branch off a bit more and start to use some other types of beads. So you can see I'm just sewing down into my little area here. And I'm just going to continue on with my peyote with my Delicas. And when I get around to the front, sorry about that, when I get around to the front, I'm probably going to head up here and start to do some fun stuff over here. So I'll see you back in a minute once I get back around to this other side, and we'll kind of have fun figuring out what's next. Okay, so I've gone all the way around. Now I already know that at some point, either when I'm back here again or when I'm in here, I'm probably going to add a little anchor point connecting these two just to further tighten all of this up if I feel like it needs it. But for now, I'll worry about that next time I'm in that area. So as you can see, I made my way around and I'm ready to head up this little area here. So I'm going to pick up, I have a Delica right on my needle. I'm just going to head up right into here. And we're not worrying anymore about even or odd count, because really, as long as you don't have thread showing, there's really nothing wrong that you can do here. So you can see what I did. I just kind of skipped right up. Here's that Delica right there. And I just skipped right up there. Now, I think at this point, I'm going to start to branch off a little bit, and I'm going to stray from my Delicas, even though I'm in an area with Delicas. Let's see, let me get this first one in there, though. And maybe I'll start to add in an 11. You'll see what that starts to look like as you start to increase in size or decrease in size. And eventually I'll be using these really fun, beautiful drucks. They're in a lovely satin finish with sort of a dark, deep navy blue color. They're going to go beautiful with this. And I'm going to start to do some accents with them shortly. So you can see what it starts to look like as I put in some 11s. But now that I'm getting to this area that's a little bit smaller, I'm probably going to go back down to a Delica here so I can fit that in nicely. Now, the thing to remember is that you won't be able to copy what I'm doing exactly, because your geode slice, as I showed you before and how beautifully different they are, your geode slices are all going to be a little different. So it's not like you're going to be able to start with an exact 50 count in the beginning that I did. You're going to have to figure out your own bead count for your own geode slice. But the thing to remember is the techniques that I'm showing you here. And also try to stay open-minded about just having fun with it and knowing that if you don't like something, you can take it out, or you can further embellish it or bead over it. You can have a lot of fun with this. Freeform is tough for people though, because there are those of us who like to have that exact pattern. And that's great, but this is a nice way, I think, to challenge yourself if you're the type that tends to struggle there. So that's what I did. You can see I started to create a lovely little peyote bridge here. At this point, I can go down here, I can go up here, I can go any number of places. So I'm going to start to do a bit more peyote on this. I'm going to start to bulk it up a little bit more, and I'll come back to you in a minute to show you what I've been able to work up. Okay, so let me show you where I'm at. As you can see, I've built up a bit more of the peyote. I added in an additional little bridge here that I connected back here. I also went back around and I added a little bridge here, and I came out here, and then I've just gone up here to here. So some other design things to keep in mind is just because you are at an area with peyote, or even if it's one of these straight lines of beads without peyote, does not mean you have to do peyote. So if you want this to have, maybe towards the edges here, you want it to be a little simpler and have sort of like that veins of a leaf sort of thing going, you can travel through these beads without doing any peyote if you don't want to. Same thing with anything on the front. You can travel through an area, like I might decide I don't want to make this area any wider, but I might use it to travel through to get to another area that I want to do work on. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just because you're at an area of your geode, slice, does not mean you have to build it up if you don't want to. You can simply use it as a traveling point to get to another area. Another thing to also keep in mind is on the back, you can keep the back very simple if you'd like, and you don't have to do any peyote at all. Honestly, I think it's lovely to build up some peyote on the back, just because I think the back should be just as lovely as the front of any project. But again, these are all subjective decisions that you can make. So at this point, I'm going to keep going on doing a little bit more building up of beads, and I'll see you back in a minute so we can work on getting a loop on there. All right, you can see I've done a whole bunch of beautiful embellishments on here, or building up that peyote. This is what my back now looks like. And again, you can keep building this up however you'd like. I would say do more of your buildup, of course, on the front, not just because of, obviously it's the front, but because you don't want the back to get too bulky since it's the back. But that doesn't mean it can't still have some lovely peyote. I just would probably keep it to some of the smaller beads on the back. So what I've done now is I've traveled up here, and I'm coming out of the very, very tip of my piece here, the very center bead at the very tip top. And I'm going to do a little beaded loop. I'm going to keep this kind of simple. It's not like I have a strip of beads going in the other direction where I could do a peyote bail. I don't. So I'm going to keep it a little simple, especially because I already have so much going on here that I don't want this to get too crazy. So I can pick what kind of beads I want to use for my loop. I think I'm going to use some of my smaller ones mixed with some of those drugs. So I'm going to start with, I think, a couple Delicas, a couple of my 11s, and then I'm going to have the top of the loop be some of my drugs, and then I'll just mirror what I did on the other side of them. I'll give you a close-up in just a second. So that's what I did. And now I'll check it for size. And all I'm going to do is loop back through the same bead that I'm coming out of, just like that. Now you're going to want to have in mind maybe what you want to hang this from, because that might determine how big you want this loop to be. So that's a factor you want to keep in mind. I don't know necessarily what I'm going to have this hang off of, so I'm going to keep it just a little bit on the bigger side so I have some options. But if you know what's going on something very tiny, you can certainly make your loop a little smaller. I wouldn't go too small because I think this is such a large pendant that you don't want to have anything be too diminutive. So now all I'm going to do is circle back through this loop. I want to make sure that I reinforce it, which of course that's very important because it is going to be it needs to be a strong part of your pendant because it's where it's going to be hanging from. So we're going to go back through those beads. Oops, as it twirls and whirls around in my fingertips. And what's nice about doing freeform peyote is, again, there aren't any rules. There's definitely design tips and tricks that can be handy, but you can choose which ones you do or don't want to use. So we're going to end up with this really lovely little loop here. I'll end up going back and reinforcing that a little bit more, and then I'll weave out my thread. So I'm going to get that done and come back to you just to give you a little wrap up and show you the final piece. Okay, here is my final product here, and I love how organic freeform peyote can look, and I think having this beautiful geode slice as the base really helps to enforce that look there. I absolutely love it. Now our Wildhorse collection, if you're seeing this video up on YouTube, is now available on our website, eurekacrystalbeads.com. Everything I used in this video, all of these beautiful seed beads, all of these lovely things, they're all going to be included in that collection plus more. So you're going to get a ton more as well. There are also some other colors of seed beads here. So if you happen to get one of the geode slices that has a bit more of this sort of bricky red color, there's a beautiful sort of brick red seed bead, a size 11 that's included. So you're definitely going to have plenty of colors to pick up on all of these beautiful, unique geode slices. So again, have fun with it. Try to think outside your box. Give it a try. Play with it. Freeform peyote is a lot of fun. And remember, if you don't like it, you can always just rip it out and redo it. It's sometimes a little trial and error. I will admit to that. There are some things I did here that I didn't love, so I took out and then redid it. So have fun with it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to visit us on over at eurekacrystalbeads.com for everything I used in this video, and we'll of course link you below as well in the description box, as we always do. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.